Yes, live, 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 live. This is how you go live. And this is Jessica.
It. How are we going to take all the wood paneling and curls?
I know there's no room.
I love your hair. I don't care that the whole world knows it. It looks
Thank
amazing.
you. Yours looks amazing. I can't believe you cut it yourself at home.
Well, I technically cut it myself, but Christy Collins is amazing. And we went on a Zoom and she like talked me through which piece.
So
Like,
she's like, okay, that curl to the left, like
yeah,
cut that about this much.
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my God.
By and like I had a white background behind me. It was amazing. Anyone who has curly hair and is on quarantine and is like, I need a haircut, Christy Collins.
Mm-hmm. Go
Works.
find her.
Find her. She's right here on Instagram. That's how I found her. So, yeah, it's exciting.
I don't know if you have perused the world of TikTok, but it's really funny how many TikToks are talking about like everyone needs to cut their bangs and like shave their head and like girls just encouraging girls to go nuts with hairstyles. It's really cute.
That's adorable. I haven't seen it yet, actually. I
Yeah.
haven't seen any TikTok. I'm just, I don't want to freak anyone out when I say this, but I am too old for TikTok. I'm not too old to enjoy it. The jerks. Anyway, so yeah, now I'm not going to be making TikToks. Watch me start tomorrow like an asshole, but yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's like I've enjoyed scrolling through it, but honestly, I just feel like it gives me brainworms. It's so
But
like a true time K-hole that I can't escape from. So I just try and like stay away now.
I can tell just from seeing it on Instagram. I'm just like, it's too much. I love to see everybody into. By the way, have you noticed that we are not the only curly haired enthusiasts in the world? Hey,
No,
Kay.
I don't read these. Oh,
I know.
curlies.
Come on, curlies. What is? We do need curly hair routine. I mean, I do want to know what is your favorite product right now.
Yes. Oh my God. So I have traditionally, historically been given a lot of free products from like the jobs that I've had. And now I'm kind of on my own and I'm like, okay, I need to have like a product that I like and that works. And I've just been using Shea
Yeah,
Moisture, the brand. It's just from like CVS and they have
yeah,
a leave-in conditioner. But I don't actually typically use the leave-in conditioner. I just condition it and then I don't rinse it. And that's it.
right. Which is leave in, right? That's
Right.
technically leave
Technically.
in.
They don't say specifically that you have to rinse it. So,
No, you don't have to rinse it. I do that with Terax Crema. Terax Crema is really fine hair, so it doesn't weigh it down.
important. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've heard, but they're a great company.
I
So
haven't.
yeah, if you've got curly hair and you're looking for product, Intersense. Yeah.
Hot tip from Jessica.
Well,
By the
we're
way,
all
it's
about
just so nice to.
curly.
You're a little
So
bit staticky, so I didn't catch that.
I said we're all about products in curly world. Nothing too interesting.
You go.
Uh, I can't keep up with these. Oh,
Um,
okay.
I
So
was just gonna say,
on to
so nice to talk to you again, and
I know.
even though it's
Yeah.
like in this world of metallic-y staticness, it's still really nice. And how are you going? Like, how are you coping with all of this?
I mean, if we're being honest, my partner has been having a death experience that I've almost killed him. That's strangling. Yeah, it's like this week I've just been at this like restless moment. I don't know about you with being home. I feel really blessed with health. Am I still staticky? Is my audio still choppy?
Your audio is good for me. Your screen is like a little bit blurry, but it always is with like the second person who joins.
I think that makes sense. Unfortunately, I wish there was something I can do, my love. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Uh, Yeah. Oh well. So yeah. So I've been, this week restless. I don't know about you. Last week was a little more depressed, so I'll
Yeah.
take restless. Uh,
Yeah.
the journey. It's like a combination of like what's happening for us as individuals, and then the collective. Uh,
Mhm.
it's just a really shocking time. How about you? How
Yeah.
have you been doing?
Yeah, I've been well, I think I've just been on autopilot in like a big way. And just acting quite robotic, and trying to process like where and how I can. But for me, it's just a lot of like pushing through is my instinctual process. So that's meant like not being able to focus, so I'll try and do things like I normally would, but my focus is just like not there. And then yesterday in particular, I felt really emotionally raw, and I was like finally able to let it out, and I had the biggest sobbing, like biblical proportions, snot everywhere, just
Good for you.
emptied of tears. So yeah, I think I just really, really needed that. So I'm kind of glad that's the wave that I'm riding now instead of just pushing everything. So I kind of feel like, every day is a new challenge and a new, blessing, and it's just all the ebbs and flows.
Yeah, I have been trying to make a habit of letting myself spontaneously cry for no reason,
Yeah.
because you know what I mean? Because I just think like when I start to get a little relaxed, which is not my natural state to begin with, when I start to get a little relaxed, it's like there's all this grief in my system, and so I just let myself cry for no reason. Um, Again, as a way to kind of, just off gas. Then it gets easier to do real relaxation. Um,
Yeah.
but there's just, there's no consistency in this. And I think that that's just something we all have to make some peace with.
Yeah,
Um, it is what it is.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well said.
Can we talk about how great your podcast is and how much I loved you, the editing, the music, the pace? I cannot wait to hear every single episode. I love it.
You. That honestly means so much to me. And because we've been in this isolation world since I released it, I haven't got a lot of feedback, like
Yeah.
people on Instagram are like, yay, can't wait. And my partner likes it. But I don't really, have a lot of like real time feedback on what people like about it. So it's so nice of you to say. I really appreciate it. And I love the music too. I think that like the editing and the, like you say, the pace of all the little sound bites and music is
Yeah.
so fun. They just did such a good job. The Wonder Media team are just like, yeah, really creative, and it sounds so awesome.
Yeah, it really does. And having, of course, I was there to record, so I knew I knew a lot of what was being said. But I really loved the parts where I wasn't there. Your thoughts, and also I really like that you modeled for people, that you didn't treat me like a, put a quarter in a slot, because a lot of
Yeah,
people realize that that's what they're doing, and that that might be complicated. So I was really pleased that you modeled that for people.
I had to. I just felt like, that's the stuff that everybody is, they're either treating you like a mystical jukebox, presumably, or they're thinking that stuff and not saying it, and maybe feeling that, you know, it's just them. And I think so much of the episode and what we talked about was just the universality of our need for, connection and proper bereavement and proper processes to grieve and feel like we have a connection with dead people that we loved. And so, I just thought it was important to like step back and be like, it's totally normal. But also, yeah, like treat your psychic medium with respect, please.
Yes, yes, yes. Unless you're like in for a session, but yeah, people don't really realize something that I've learned through social media is that people are like, I don't want a reading, Jessica. I just want you to tell me what my astrology means. Or I don't
Mm,
want a reading. I just want you to tell me if I should break up with my boyfriend, not realizing that that is the definition of what happens in a reading. So
yeah,
people don't really realize what this stuff is because it's uncommon, and because also a lot of psychics, a lot of astrologers, a lot of woo-woo people don't have great boundaries. So
mm,
you
mm,
know, you
totally.
ask psychics a question, on social media, maybe 3 of them will give you the answer, even though it's not really appropriate to ask for a free reading from someone. So, it's a lot of things, but thank you. And I really love the podcast. If you guys haven't heard it already, man, you're missing out.
Oh, thanks. And
Absolutely.
speaking of like assumptions that people make about you, like what are some of the things that people assume when you tell them that you're a psychic medium?
So there's so many things. One thing that people assume is that I receive a lot of hate for it, or that like I had some serious like trials and tribulations to get through to like accept myself. And in that way,
Mm-hmm.
that's not been my story. Because I was an astrologer from a very young age, it's like I had already made peace with not belonging and not having a conventional job and having a job that people roll their eyes at. They do a lot less so these days than they did when I was in the 90s.
Yeah.
And lots. But uh, so people like assume. So what I'm experiencing in the last year or two is that people, like journalists, will interview me and be like, "Well, you must get lots of hate. How's that hate? People must not, uh, believe in what you do. How is that for you?" And that's not my experience. So I just am like, "Oh, that journalist feels that way."
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean most of the people I interact with do. So that's kind of a surprising thing. But also, people hear the word psychic and they think to themselves, okay, that means you know everything about everything all at once. And that's
Mm,
not what psychic means. It doesn't mean I know the beginning and the middle and the end.
yeah.
And it doesn't mean I know about all the things. The way I describe psychics is
Like a superhero or something.
exactly. But even superheroes don't know all the things. That's like a
Yeah.
terrible dark. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
the way you think about psychic is like I have an internet connection. I got this great fiber internet connection, but I have to go to the website and then I have to look for the right page on the website. So about um, it's not about knowing things. It's having access to knowing things. It's
Mm,
people just assume well, why didn't you predict this? And
yeah.
sometimes it's just that's a ridiculous concept, and then other times it's like, well, being psychic doesn't mean making predictions either. Uh,
Mm,
is our predictions useful? Is if astrologers had said, "Hey, listen, there's going to be a global pandemic," what do you think would be different?
mm,
Nothing, except for there would be some paranoid people. But I can tell you, like when I talked to my partner about the fact that this was coming, I started talking to him about it in 2016. He was
mm,
like, "Okay, fine, Jessica, sure, okay, cool." Like it's not like he doesn't believe me,
yeah.
but I mean, like it didn't. Even I mean, I started buying supplies in 2017, but I didn't fully believe it, even though I saw it coming. Because
Right.
what is the value of prediction, really, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Because even when people, do predict things in a way that like we're all aware of, like Nostradamus's predictions and stuff, people are still going to be like, oh, that was vague. That could have related to anything. Like you can't win in that
yeah.
way.
And did you see how he actually predicted COVID-19?
No.
I just saw it. KQED. I was interviewed on KQED. It came out yesterday, and then the article right underneath it on their website. You guys should check out both the thing I was interviewed in because it was about creatives and artists, and whether or not we're actually able to create in this period.
Yeah.
So a few others. So you should check that out. But also, that article like quoted how Nostradamus predicted that it would come in on a ship and that it would be this highly contagious thing and it would be focused on Italy and the U.S., like all this stuff. So, yeah, we're checking
Wow.
out Nostradamus.
Yeah.
And what
With the tea.
nothing. It doesn't do anything. Like prediction isn't that useful unless you're willing to heed the prediction. But is that even smart? Should you orient your life around a prediction? I don't
Yeah.
know. So I think psychic is more valuable when we use it as a tool for finding the truth and finding best practices as opposed to predictions. I am just so excited that I'm seeing so much excitement about our curls because it's
Yeah.
all I'm thinking about. We're talking about Nostradamus, but I'm thinking about your hair.
Yeah.
That's all.
It's hard not to when there's just like, so much in your face. Um,
Also, what's up with us both having wood walls?
Oh yeah, we do. Are you in your studio?
Yeah, this is my little work studio. I've got my piano over here. You can't really,
Uh,
there's like a tree right outside my window, and next to that tree is another tree, and the other tree has a hummingbird nest in it. And every day in my stories, I've been posting hummingbird babies because they're like right low to the ground, so I can get in there. And
they're
the
so
mother,
cute.
for some reason,
Oh, they're so so cute. And I love the nest. It's like a perfect sphere, except the top has a hole for their little heads. It's
their little
so
heads, and they're getting so big, so the nest is like expanding right now. Very,
oh
it's
that
very
that is the kind of content I want to see in the world.
which is why I've been posting it to my stories. You should be peeping my stories. I'm trying to post like at least 2 a day because the babies grow so fast. But hummingbird babies are notorious for not leaving the nest. You know, they like to stay in the nest a long time.
Oh
Um,
wow.
Panda Elizabeth Henry, my best friend, who's a cat, he killed one
Yeah,
last time we had a baby. So we'll fingers crossed.
yeah, yeah.
Get a perm. Just get the perm. Don't even think
Get
about it.
the everybody get a perm. You can still
Get a,
get those, right?
you know what? Perms have gotten good. Perms are good. I've seen it now. Perms have gotten good.
The
So get
technology has improved immensely from like middle school.
has, yeah.
So, can I ask you another question about you're talking about being an astrologer before a psychic medium? Because that's so interesting. And like, I want to know, okay, I have two questions in my head. The first is, do you think that you would have discovered your psychic medium gifts in the same way were you not already doing astrology? And today, because I actually personally haven't got a formal reading from you, do you do psychic mediumship and astrology in the same sessions, or do you need to separate them out to give, people the depth for both?
Yeah. So to your first question, no. I didn't believe in psychics at all. I didn't believe that you communicate with animals, you communicate with dead people, and I definitely didn't believe in psychics. And I wasn't close to it, but I didn't believe in it, you know. So I hadn't like if I was working in advertising, if I was like a real estate agent, would I have ever discovered it? I don't know. I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
Because I essentially, like as I talked about with you on the podcast, I really discovered it because people made me.
Yeah.
And I discovered a lot of my skills as people, like clients coming in and being like, I really want you to try this. Um, and so I don't think I would have figured it out. The other thing is it was looking back at my childhood, I was an empath and a psychic and had mediumship abilities um, throughout my childhood. So thank God I discovered it because I have less physical and emotional pain because I'm aware of it. I had a lot of pain growing up. I was like sick all the time, and it was related to that. And when I started actually like consciously working as a psychic and a medium, everything got better in my life except for my sleep, which got worse. But everything else, and I'm, 45, and my health is stronger now than it was when I was 25 because I
Yeah.
didn't know what I was feeling. And then the other question you asked me, wait, what was it again? It was a good
Like,
question.
do you do in
Oh,
your
right.
astrology readings psychic work?
It's all one. It's
Yeah.
you know these are very different things, but they're only different in terms of methodology. I use each of these tools for helping people, so I don't
Mhm.
really care if I'm using tarot or psychic or medium, or sometimes if I'm talking to a client and they're kind of blocked, I will talk to their animal friends at home. So I'll just communicate with the animals because animals will narc on you because they're watching you.
Mhm.
So because they're your fucking friends. Friends are
Mhm.
watching you. Will tell all the people all the things. So no, I do it all interchangeably. And in fact, on my podcast, last Sunday's episode was number 98. And
Mhm.
98, I did a reading for this amazing activist and writer, Sonia Renee Taylor. And it was really cool because in that reading, I got to read her birth chart, communicate with lost loved ones, communicate with the land,
Mhm.
um, And so there was like psychic work, medium work, animal communication, and then also straight up astrology. So I got to kind of, that's more of how my readings tend to go. They're just kind of interchangeable.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
I love
So,
that. I have to go and listen to episode 98. I've been behind on my
yeah,
podcast. Everybody's like listening to more right now because they're home, but I've managed to listen to way less than I normally would because I don't have a commute anymore.
that's, that's actually what is happening. People are listening
Mm,
to podcasts less because the routines where they folded podcast listening in are down. And so I've actually heard from like podcasting platforms that people are listening
mm.
to podcasts less. They're listening to longer podcasts less.
Yeah.
Um, just fun facts, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the answer.
That totally, yeah, because I've got a backlog now. And I'm also discovering more because people are talking about podcasting more the last few weeks. And so I'm just like keeping a list.
Yeah,
But what you said about being sick when you were younger, we also talked a little bit about it in the episode where we touched on psychic protection.
yeah.
So I was wondering, like, for the people watching, like, who, mediumship aside, like, what's your personal advice to people in terms of just general, like, psychic protection and hygiene?
Hmm. So many things, and a lot of it depends on where they are, how they're wired. Like I'm very earthy. Somebody who's very watery is going to have a different set of needs.
Mm-hmm.
But just very briefly, kind of like I touched on the podcast about my metaphor about like on your podcast about when you open the door to dead people, you just unless you're standing at the door, anything can come through, right? And the same thing is true when you are empathetic, when you are psychic or intuitive or just like a sensey schmency. Um,
Mm.
so in that case, it is really important to be in your body. So like what you're talking about like kind of being on robot mode and being like disassociated out of your body as a coping tool, that
Yeah.
actually opens up for psychic damage from other
Mm-hmm.
people. It's not like people who are like, Jericho, I'm mad at you. But it's just like the morphic field, the group field of trauma and grief and fear. We are more vulnerable to it when we're not in our bodies. So
Yeah.
having sort of like grounding exercises is valuable. I hate exercising. I don't want to be told to exercise, although I should. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're not going to exercise, you can put your feet flat on the earth or on the ground and just really focus on bringing this center of the earth's energy up through the center of the earth, up through your feet, all the way up through your whole entire body and out past your head. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if you can just breathe and stay associated in your body and in your energetic body when doing that is really valuable. Um, and I am a big fan of crystals. I have, watch me brag, I have really
Mm-hmm.
beautiful crystals. This
Yeah.
is a black tourmaline and I am in love with it. I have one that's too heavy to pick up. It's a green tourmaline next to me. I have a lot of grounding crystals that do work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have crystals, it's great. I think a great tool. The ethics of mining are something to be really kind of mindful of. And so, not so good for shelter in place. But what I do a lot of times is I go to like thrift stores and vintage stores where there are many crystals. And people just like
Mm.
get them from, whatever they're called, homes that are like being liquidated. And the
Say,
people who are selling them have
yeah.
no. So it's where I've gotten some of my best crystals, actually.
That is
So
such
that's
a tip. Hmm.
yeah. I
I
mean,
love
I don't
that.
think
Yes. Yeah.
it's a good idea, right? And most people don't think of it, but
Yeah.
trust me, there's some fucking fabulous. Can I say fucking?
You can say anything.
Okay, you can get some fucking
You're in
fabulous.
charge here. Yeah.
Is my audio cutting up a little bit now?
It only cuts up, like, I think when I'm saying something. That's how it is for me.
Okay.
If people watching have a different experience, please let us know. But yeah, I love it. I'm just like too in there interrupting you constantly. But another question I have, okay, is in the episode, the most like fun and fascinating bit for me, one of many, was when you were talking about like specific experiences that you had where like you got a certain message and then you found out, more information about how it actually related to people's lives. So I kind of wonder if you have an experience, doesn't have to be super detailed, but like what's one of the most like surprising or interesting experiences that you've had connecting with somebody?
Good question. Good question. There's so there's so many, and there's a couple that I kind of like always think of when people ask me that kind of question um, because probably they happened early in my career. So that means they happened like 15 years ago or more. And so I feel less concerned about privacy. Like somebody wouldn't be able to track it back in the same way. And I wouldn't ever want to compromise anyone's privacy. There is a story that I can tell if you want me to tell the story.
Yes.
Okay, so there's this woman who came to me for mediumship session because her mother passed away, and she herself is, I don't know, like 30 years older than me. And she came to me a couple times to communicate with her mom, who she loved very much. Now, the mother one time, the dead mother one time, showed up and she was like, listen, you need to go and find Uncle John. This man was not really, I'm changing names, obviously. And the man was not an uncle. The man was like Uncle John, like friend of the
Yeah.
family. And my client was like, huh? And the dead mother was like, you go to his house and you knock on the door and you find him. And he will not answer the door when you knock, but it doesn't matter. You find a way into that apartment and you find Uncle John. So my client, because she had had a bunch of experiences with me already, did it. She, the next day or like a couple days later, went to Uncle John's house, knocked on the door. Sure enough, he didn't answer the door. So she got the super, because it was like a unit in a building. She got the super to open the door. The apartment was empty and the bed was covered in blood. And she was like, WTF, but she doesn't cuss. So that was the vibe. So she went to
Yeah.
all the hospitals in the area and she finally, she did find him and he had like I don't know if his bladder exploded or something in that region of the body. And if she hadn't found him, he would have been in terrible trouble. She was like family and she was there to help. And so that was an experience that was just like amazingly valuable because it didn't just help my client, but it also was just like, there's no way I could have known that. Like, there's something where I'm just like, oh, she misses you. Oh, she's sorry. Okay, that's like such a common thing that, and there's this whole burden of proof on what I do, and I get it, and there should be. But that was just so specific and actionable that
Yeah.
an experience like that, it's why I tell that particular story. I remember in the early years of me doing this work, I had a client come in and her husband had died. And he wanted to talk to her about properties he owned. Like that was what he was just interested in money. They were
Mhm.
really powerful. And he, uh, he kept on talking about this house that there was like all this beautiful green around. And she was like, no, 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 sorry, that doesn't mean anything to me. No. And for some reason, he was just really pressing. So I just kept on telling and telling and telling her. Finally, at the very end of the hour, she was like, I live on a golf course. Could that be it? And I was like, bitch, it could be. Yes, yes, that could count as greenery. But
I would say so, yeah.
a little bit, yeah. But it's just like that experience really taught me that people will hear what they want to hear. And she actually didn't want it to be true. And so she didn't, living on a golf course didn't equal around greenery. I've had experiences with people that were just, again, impossible for me to know. There was a woman that I worked with, and she was adopted. She had never met her mother, but her mother had passed. And so she finally was connected with her birth family. So I, she had come to town and I met with her in person, and her dead mother told me all these things, including things about the house, things about um, my client's aunt and the dead woman's sister, like all of this stuff. And then she went the next day and actually met them and went to the house, and she was able to verify all this information. Um, so like so many things like that that are super like it's just like proof, I guess,
Yeah.
have happened. And then there's other things, so many other things that are so much more personal. And the dead are often say similar things, honestly, just like the living do. When somebody's going through a breakup or they're not sure whether or not they should break up with someone, they say pretty much the same things all the time too. So it's
Yeah.
it's wise to be critical of mediums and psychics. It's wise to be critical of Dr. Oz, anyone with a doctor in front of their fucking name, or like, good to be, a critical thinker. Um, but also, the truth isn't always that unique. And so, I tell these stories and they're like, oh my God, these stories, but not every reading is like that, and it shouldn't have to be. Um, so, for whatever that's worth, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. It's so true, isn't it? I mean, like human beings, like we are not that unique. We're not that special. We're all very much the same. And I remember like in the episode you said that two of the things that you hear a lot from dead people are I love you and I'm sorry, and it's like, yeah, that about sums it up.
Yeah, I mean, right? But isn't that when you've lost touch with someone and then you reconnect with them on purpose, it's generally, I want you to say you're sorry or I want to say I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and I think the thing that's tricky about, like, when you were asking me about the like celebrity psychics,
Mm,
I don't know if they're real or fake or whatever. Like, I don't know those people. But I think that people have such a strong feeling about dead people and grieving people, that it's very, what we all do is we scan for, is this real or fake? Is this real or fake? Is this real or fake?
yeah,
Whereas we don't do that in the same way with like Dr. Oz. We
yeah,
should,
yeah,
don't. Um, and so it's a mixed bag. Like on the one hand, I want to really encourage critical thinking, especially with spiritual stuff. Never give away your power and your agency to someone. And
yeah,
at the same time, this kind of like burden of proof thing comes from an inherent disrespect of the practice and or fear of the practice, and
yeah,
that is inherited through you know colonialization and the church and all these things, and not just through common sense and like stuff like that. As you
yeah.
talked about, it's like these practices are older than all time, right? Like we are
Right.
interconnected with the cycle of death, and
Mm,
I think that there's a great use for you very well, I think, kind of you worded it better than I'm about to, but like for being curious and having the conversation and being open to exploring that conversation. I think that yeah, if you guys haven't heard this podcast episode, boop boop boop, listen to it. This is me putting the headset. Did you? Yeah,
whoop.
that's right. That's what I
Yeah,
did. I did.
it's such a good point. I think fear is the root of so much of that stuff. If people weren't fearful and they were just purely using common sense, then why not have the conversation? Why not be curious? I was listening to, or I was reading, there is this occult historian called Mitch Horowitz, who's actually going to be on the podcast later in the season. And he was with these like investment bankers or something sitting around and talking about spirituality, and they were like just completely dissing it, like they were just like straight up atheists and all the rest. And he was like, okay, like go to the bathroom right now and like say Bloody Mary 3 times in the mirror, and like none of them would do it. Like the fear is so strong.
Right.
So I
For
think
people
that's an
who don't
interesting anecdote.
do it.
Pardon me?
People who don't believe but they still won't do it. I mean,
Yeah,
I would do that. But I think that this is the thing, is that it is wise to be scared of spirits because you cannot
yeah,
see them, right? And
yeah,
it's episode number 2, correct?
yeah,
Episode number 2. I see a bunch of people asking. It's wise to be frightened of that. It's wise to be frightened of opening up energetically. I think when people aren't scared, I'm
mm,
scared for them
yeah.
because
That's our nature for a reason.
yes, absolutely. It is risky letting in spirits, and when people come to me because they want to connect with a dead ancestor because they're interested, the answer is always no. Hell no. If an ancestor comes through of their own accord, I'll connect with them, and if they seem dangerous to me or my client, I will cut the connection. And the reality is that really we need to have common sense and know that not all of your ancestors are going to be good people, obviously, unless you come from a unique line of perfect people. There's going to be
Yeah,
your line. And if you're like, how do we all reconcile that, so many of us talk about our ancestors with such reverie, but then we also talk about our trauma. And we
Mm.
talk about, as people, there's just, it's very tricky to like hold both of those things at the same time, but we must. I think we must. And being, I think, a spiritual person is so much about being present with the duality of it, is that we can have reverence for our ancestors because they're our ancestors, and also be critical and be like, yeah, I'm not going to let just any old person into my space. We
Mhm.
should build some trust first, whether they're in bodies or not in bodies.
Absolutely. And that's why I love talking to you and I loved our episode because it's so nuanced and it's also so you've come to all these conclusions through experience and through a lifetime of doing this work. It's not like a kind of a template of like uh keywords and like a certain scope. It's literally just you and like what you've come to understand and all the things that we haven't yet because they're mysteries. And I love that, like the way that you answered questions was so refreshing. And I think like a lot of what we're talking about, and especially relating to the fear and everything, I think it's just like, and we kind of touched on the episode but not really, like death is so scary to us because we don't understand it. And like you say, we're coming from like colonialism and like religion and patriarchy and all these forces that have kept death as this thing to be scared of, to not talk about, to not even try to understand. And when people die in our culture in the West, it's like completely don't ask, don't tell, out of sight, out of mouth, out of mind. We put our elderly people in homes, which now we're seeing the effects of with this pandemic. Um, I don't even know what my question to you is there, but I guess like, what are your thoughts on how we as a culture can like better come to understand and like come to terms with death as a thing?
Oh, it's such a great question. I mean, my God, it's so important. I, you know, my family's Jewish. I'm Jewish, and I don't actually pay a lot of attention to very much related to Judaism. But I will say we're fucking excellent at suffering. It's kind of on
Mm-hmm.
brand for us. And one of
Mm-hmm.
the things we're really good at is dealing with death. We some dies, and not only most people know about Shiva. You like sit for 7 days. You don't cook for yourself. You cover all the mirrors because you're not supposed to invest in vanity. But what less people know about is that the immediate family of the bereaved, what we do is we're nobody's supposed to do anything for vanity. So men don't shave, women aren't supposed to do makeup or anything. You're supposed to rip your clothing and then wear the same clothes that are ripped for a week. And
Mm-hmm.
I love that template. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
not the girl thing unless that works for you, but the template of letting the world see that you are fucked up, letting the world see that you have turned away from material things and you are in the mess of your inside. Asking your community to take care of you and having that community come together to provide for you food, sustenance, attention, not being responsible for so many things in the material world. That is a beautiful thing. And I honestly feel that having that kind of like cultural and spiritual background has helped me be a better counselor of the bereaved because so many people from Christian backgrounds, I mean, they really poo-poo on the mourning out loud. It's like mourning is supposed to be like, yeah, you had a hard week, move along. And, again, with Jews, we don't even put a gravestone up until the 1 year anniversary of the burial. And we do that because the bereaved are not supposed to even confront it for a year. And so I am, that's like literally the only way anytime you'll ever hear me like whoop whooping a religion, but I really do like that as an approach. It's really
Mm-hmm.
understanding the layers of it and that death happens to the living because it's supposed to change us. Death
Mm.
happens to the living so that we are completely turned away from the material world and we deal with what is happening internally. Anyone who's bereaved, who's lost a loved one, will know that it feels like a part of you has been ripped out of your body or has been stabbed to death or whatever. Like it's
Yeah.
it's visceral. It's body. It's not just mind or just heart. It's so complete. And I think the the like best advice I can give anyone ever is give yourself permission to be messy and require others to take care of you. And also to know that um, at a certain point, we need to be able to transition into a different form of grief. And that certain point might be like at a week it changes, at 6 months it changes, at 1 year it changes, at 3 years it changes. It never goes away though. Grief is
No.
never goes away for most of us for real loss. And I will just say one more thing about it, which is the loss of an animal friend and the loss of a pregnancy are two losses that I've counseled so many people on, and that they don't get a lot of validation for outside of um, very small places. So, in terms of a loss of pregnancy, for many people who get pregnant of whatever gender, uh, the loss of a pregnancy is not a big thing. It's like a medical thing that happens to them, whether it's an abortion or it's, like your body just doesn't work with it. Okay, fine. But for just as many, maybe more, I don't know, people, losing a pregnancy is and a death that occurred in your own body. And it is really found and it is totally helpful to feel whatever you feel, whether it's nothing much or completely bereaved.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important distinction. And I mean, it's a, not distinction, it's a really important kind of validation I would want to offer to people is feel
Yeah.
what you feel. There's no right way. And then with our furry friends, and I'm going like this because mine is sitting right here. Um, it's an uncomplicated form of love. It's an it's love with someone who's never told you to fuck off, who's never like disappointed you really. It's this just heart basis relationship, and often with our animal friends, we live with them, and we live with them for like a decade or more. And
Yeah.
an animal is something harder than losing a human because we can't say what needs to be said in the same way. Now, technically, actually, we can, but we don't have confidence in it. And
Yeah.
so I will say, you know, this like idea of like having hierarchical feelings, like, oh yeah, you're suffering, but you lost a cat, not a human. That's fair. And also, is it? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the value of it. So I just want to hold space for all of that. Um,
Absolutely. Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's messy.
It's so
Yeah,
messy, and as well as our animal friends, and people that have had miscarriages and things like that, which, speaking of our cultures, like sanitizing death, like every doctor will tell any pregnant person, don't tell anyone until 12 weeks, because God forbid you inconvenience them with their learning of the fact that you've lost a fetus, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
or a child, depending on the circumstances. Like, we aren't supposed to even, put the burden of someone else hearing about death onto another person. It's just like wild. But also, just like in the comments, if someone's in a breakup right now, we're all grieving for the people that are losing their lives unnecessarily right now all over the world. And it's fucking messy.
Yeah.
And it's just a constant negotiation. But the last thing you want to do is not let yourself be where you are.
Yes, agreed, agreed. And to give yourself permission to be where however you are. I'm such a Capricorn. The way I process emotions is completely different than, I have ex who has like 700 million planets in Scorpio. Like literally everything but two in her chart was Scorpio. And she endured many losses, as unfortunately people with a lot of Scorpio in their chart often do. And her rate of grief, like her experience, the depth of her grief, and the amount of time that she experienced it over, it was unique to her. So be who you are and where you are, and make sure you're making progress. That progress doesn't have to be quick, especially not with grief. And I think even if you don't know anyone who's got COVID or who's passed, the fact that there are so many people passing right now, the fact that we are all confronted with not just human death, but the death of a way of life, um, we are all in grief. We are all being confronted with the frailty of our security and our survival. And if you are unfazed by that, I'm guessing you're not paying attention to it for whatever reasons, and no judgment. But if you are faced by it, That's cool. It's awful. I'm sorry, but like be in it. Give yourself permission to be in it because this shit is nuts. It's nuts. And I think it's important that we just validate each other. If we are checking out or over associating or just like lost or I keep on talking about this with people, but dreams, whose dream life is bananas right now? Everyone, right? I mean, I'm seeing
Everyone.
conventional like resources. People aren't like into woo. People are having bonkers dreams. And from my perspective, it's because of the morphic field, the group field of grief and fear. And psychologists are going to have their own take on that. But really, at the end of the day, we are in this. And, it's important that you start where you're at, but stay in it because grief doesn't go away. Grief requires us to embrace it. When we abandon ourselves in grief, we are doing ourselves a great injury. It's
Yeah.
not conscious. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you so much for saying all that. I just love how like every conversation with you just turns into like these profound like light bulb moments and insights. Like that's just like the joy that is you. And thank you for being on this podcast episode. We're talking about talking to dead people, but it's also like so much more, which I think is why it's so beautiful and why I'm so grateful that you came on it. It was nice being on a podcast with you again.
I loved it. Also, if anyone hasn't heard self-service podcast, that's dumb. I mean, I'm not saying you're dumb, but like his self-service was awesome, and I just love getting that to
Yeah.
do that with you. And I hope we get to do more podcasty shit because I adore you. And
Adore
I
you.
our hair mashup, our accent mashup, a little Canadian, a little American, a little Australian. Who doesn't want all that? I said who.
Yes. I loved
Yeah.
it when Wonder Media called us a dynamic duo in my comments today. I was like, I feel like the groupie and you're the star, but I'll take it.
Oh, agree, flip it. Just the thing is that like I just need my hair to grow quicker, and I need to like I just want to transplant your hair onto my hair, and then I want I wouldn't give you this. You could keep your own. It's just like I'm obsessing on your hair this whole time, and I don't
I'll
know how.
save you my trimmings when I do my DIY haircut.
Will you really?
Yeah.
Honestly, God, she was so amazing. I wish I could teach what she taught, but I am barely a student. Self-service was the shit. Agree button.
So
Um,
great. And the insights that you give on like astrology 101 stuff that people may like have skipped past. And now they're listening to Ghost of a podcast, which is amazing, especially if you're already a student of astrology. But if you want like the real basic beginners, like keywords and like what's the difference between moon and rising and stuff like that, definitely self-service has all that from you.
and great interviews, great women. There's just like it's a great podcast to sink your teeth into if you haven't already, and then go back and listen to Ghost of a Podcast and devour Beyond Belief, and then call yourself
Yeah.
healed basically and get a perm.
Yeah, you're done.
And well, get the perm and then you're done. Uh,
Yeah.
that's
Love you so much and talk to you soon. Thank you. And I'm sorry, I know there was a lot of comments and questions, but you know where to find us if it's like urgent. So thank you for being here.
yeah. Thank you. Mwah.
Mwah, mwah, mwah.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.